Pump up the volume, pump up the volume. Pump that bass.
Hey, Recruiter Recharge, Kris Dunn with you, Fistful of Talent. Happy to be joined today by Kris Brown, the Global Director of Talent Acquisition at LANDESK. Kris, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing great. Hey, first up, we're going to talk about what it takes to hire a great recruiter, something you've done a lot in your career. Before we get to that, tell us a little bit about LANDESK and tell us a little bit about your career as a talent acquisition guy.
Yeah, so LANDESK Software is headquartered in South Jordan, Utah. We're a global software company. We're in 18 different countries. We've got a little over 800 employees here. So a lot of sales, a lot of engineering, obviously, a lot of product management and IT folks here. So we're in acquisition mode right now. We've acquired 4 companies in the last 2 years. With many other acquisitions under the works. So, a lot of good stuff going on here, and obviously hiring talent is a top priority here as we, move our company forward. And, we grew about 25% last year, and a lot of that I'd like to think has to do with some of the great hiring choices we've made over the last couple of years. So, in regards to my career, I have somewhat of an interesting background. I played professional sports for 10 years. Played professional soccer and Major League Soccer. Somehow made my way into talent acquisition. It wasn't really planned, but
sure.
But I've loved it, and it's treated me well. And I've been a talent acquisition leader for a little over 5 years now, and I can say hiring a recruiter is probably one of the toughest things to do.
Professional sports career. You're a competitive guy, so I think you flowed directly into talent acquisition in that way. I think it's a natural fit. So let's talk a little bit. This month at the Recruiter Recharge, this series is sponsored by Newton Software. We're talking about what it takes to hire a great recruiter. And one of our friends from Newton, a guy named Joel Passon, did a post on Fistful of Talent as part of the series. And really he focused on 3 attributes: self-confidence, flexibility, and focus, being kind of the core of what makes a great recruiter. Give us your notes. What do you think constitutes a great recruiter, and how do you identify them in the marketplace to bring them in to compete like you want them to compete for talent when it's so competitive out there, especially for a company like LANDESK?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I did read Joel's article and definitely agreed with some of the things that he likes to look at. And I think at the end of that article, he had kind of referenced resourcefulness. And I would say that the way that I would put resourcefulness is creativity, at least for what I look for. So,
Sure.
Especially in the day and age now where talent is harder to find, and the economy's picking up, and it's harder to reach those passive candidates and get them interested. You've got to come up with some creative ways to get in front of the right people, not only to get in front of them, but to get them talking to you. And that's not always done through a phone call directly to them or an email to them. There's other avenues I think that you have to explore, and the more creative you can be to get in front of these people, the better. And so I think if you really want to compete, in whatever market you're in, you've got to come up with some creative ways to get in front of the right people and find the right people. So I think creativity is definitely one of those things I look for. And, as I interview recruiters, I get into some of the difficult recs that they've had to fill. I want them to talk to me a little bit about how they've gone about filling those, and, if they've hit dead ends, what did they try next? And just hear some of the ideas that they've come up with to get in front of the right people. So I focus a lot of interview questions on that. Some of the other things, like you mentioned, for myself, I think having that competitive nature, obviously in the agency recruiting side, that's extremely important.
Right.
But, I think, work ethic and being competitive are big things that I look for. And, I don't think you necessarily have to have an athletic background or something like that, but
Right.
I think it definitely helps. And a lot of the people that I've talked to and even hired have had a sports background. Where they have been very competitive, they've been very motivated, and they have an extremely good work ethic. And, on the agency side, work ethic, that's a big piece of it in my mind. How hard are you willing to work
Right.
To get a rec filled? And you'll be relentless, and you won't stop until you get something filled. And so, those are a few of the things that I look for.
Hey, Kris, we'll get you out of here in just a second. But before I let you go, it's interesting. You want people to compete. You have an athletic background, but I know you've hired recruiters who turned out to be great competitors that came from non-athletic backgrounds.
Yep.
Anything that you look for in the background of a recruiter, or maybe you ping them during the interview process to understand if they're going to compete. And part of competing is the creativity you mentioned earlier. Anything, like any type of background you look for in a non-athlete to show that they've competed in some way and they'll be able to grind and be resourceful the way you kind of walked us through?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to find out about their experience, whether it's internal recruiting or agency recruiting, in terms of, how many recs that have they been working on at once, see how they manage their time. Also talk about how they've done compared to others on their team.
Right.
I obviously want a high performer, and so I want to understand the best that I can, or the best that I can pull out of them, if you will. How have they performed in regards to their peers?
Sure.
Are they a top recruiter on their team? And if not, why not? And so I like to focus on, I'm a big follower of Lou Adler, and I do like a lot of the things that he says in terms of interviewing and hiring to performance and achievers. And so I do like to ask a lot of questions about how someone's performed in a similar job,
right?
And what some of their accomplishments have been, and compared to their peers. So those are a lot of the types of questions that I like to ask and get a lot of information about, is how have they compared to other recruiters in the industry and on the teams they've been on. So,
and fair to say, if they're not willing to talk about that, they're probably not the right hire for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Hey, Kris Brown, Global Director of Talent Acquisition for LANDESK on the Recruiter Recharge. Thanks for talking to us about what it takes to find and hire a great recruiter, Kris.
All right. Thanks, guys. Happy recruiting.
Pump up the volume, pump up the volume. Pump that bass.